That was France's President Macron speaking in Paris. It's right now it's prime time there, so this was an important message to all of the people in France. I want to bring in Fox contributor and 32 Advisor CEO Robert Wolf, National Taxpayer Union Senior Fellow Mattie Duppler, along with our very own Deirdre Bolton. Deirdre, I'll start with you because I found it interesting that he began this this presentation to the people of France focusing on the violence and the unacceptable behavior of politicians. And it very, maybe perhaps in the middle toward the end, did he really seem even introspective at all that perhaps this is not just about a gas tax, perhaps this is about something much deeper and he just doesn't get it?
I actually found him pretty contrite, Charles. I mean, he said basically we waited too long to address this situation. He said we understand the anger, we understand the indignation, but we do not understand violence against the police. He also is trying to get the mayors, I think, under his umbrella, saying, listen, I share the responsibility for the responsibility of the Republic with all the city mayors. So I think in a weird way, he is actually just trying to build consensus and maybe also take a little bit of the heat off himself, saying this is important for everyone who is in a position of governing to really attack the problems together. But Charles, you know this as well. He ran on a very pro-business platform, and some of the things that he wanted to do were really threatening to the average French person. He actually made a specific mention, because I wrote it down, about repealing France's wealth tax. So this is something that he had wanted to do. The average person in the street feels very strongly about this. They feel like the rich are favored. Macron, a former investment banker, is somehow seen, sometimes painted as an elite who doesn't understand what's going on in the streets, and that's why you had such a strong physical reaction to these gas taxes. It would equal about 30 cents on the gallon for us, Charles, for what he was proposing. Now, obviously, he blinked on that. He took that back. But some of the other things that he was interested in, pension reform, school reform, I have this whole list, elimination of tens of thousands of civil service posts. That is at the heart of the French economy. You heard him say, you're going to get a year-end bonus. It's going to be tax-free. Of course, this measure has to go to Parliament. But I think this is very much the olive branch that he is trying to offer the French people. But reduced job protections, those higher fuel taxes, and then cutting red tape for businesses. These are all things that France has to do economically to move forward, but it's very hard for the country to do that. But
right.
And he addressed this. What they're losing is their best and brightest. Their best and brightest leave Paris. They go and they set up businesses in Berlin, in London, Silicon Valley, New York. And you heard him make an allusion to that, saying, listen, I'm trying to get this balance right. I want to grow the economy. But I also realize that if you're rioting in the streets, I need to pay attention to that. One last thought here, Charles. Even the Bank of France coming out and saying, because of all these riots, growth in the fourth quarter is actually going to be half of what it was supposed to be. So he's really in this darned if you do, darned if you don't position. The right is strong there. The left is strong there. He's in the middle getting squeezed,
yeah,
Charles.
Well, no one wants to come see the Eiffel Tower if
Not
it's on fire, right?
No.
Mattie, but I did find interesting that he talked about reinventing the educational system and the dignity of work. And then he went on to sort of suggest, though, that you'll still have a guaranteed job and income.
Right.
Those things don't work together. If I'm going to have a guaranteed job and income, it doesn't matter what educational level I attain. See, there's no meritocracy, it feels like, and that's something I think is missing across Europe, and why the workers, people particularly who work with their hands, are up in revolt right now.
Right. Well, what you didn't hear was an explicit acknowledgement from Macron that the reason people are in the streets is not simply because of one policy. It's because one policy was the final straw for people outside of Paris who feel that the elites in the city are the ones who are controlling their futures. This is because Macron has decided that he wants to implement a gas tax, which, of course, we know with energy taxes, they are the most regressive tax out there. The poor pay a greater share of their income into their energy costs. So they're the ones who bear the burden of these policies. So I heard a lot of contrition from Macron there, but what I didn't hear was a plan for moving forward, how he's actually going to change those policies so that they don't hit the poorest first. I think that the French people are certainly waiting to hear what that looks like, and if that is indeed how he intends to govern.
They took off the gas tax, so at least step one.
Yeah, they did. I want to bring it back to Robert, because that battle that Mattie described, the big urban areas versus the rest of the country, I think it's happening in our country as well.
So,
when you think about how many counties President Trump won He won 10 times as many counties as Hillary Clinton, and although she represented a larger portion of the population.
Yeah, brings back a little bit of deja vu. You and I have had this conversation many of times. This is like Occupy Wall Street on steroids. We don't see the pitchforks, we don't see the violence, but there's a lot of similarities. That's when there was a Wall Street bailout, and you had, you know, everyday workers as well as the populist left and the far right really just pissed off that, for the most part, their taxpayer money was paying for corporate greed. And that is, in a way, what we're seeing today. I would agree with Macron in the sense that we have to have peaceful protests. This violence has carried on too far. With respect to our country, unfortunately, I equally agree. We're in the most polarizing time that I can recall, and we have to figure out how our regulations and our government gets back to working for the people. You
sense that there's a rejection, though, of the established elites, whether they're Republican or Democrat in this country or other places. You know, we see the dueling ruling party now, parties in Italy. They really didn't even exist like a decade ago. You know, the Northern League was just an idea. Five Star didn't exist. Same thing happening around all over Europe.
There's no question for the last decade, whether it's here or abroad, people don't feel that they are getting their fair shake. Whether it's how trickle-down may or may not be working for the everyday average worker, wage stagnation, it just doesn't feel good. And this is what we're seeing here. I mean, we could talk about Greece and Italy and everywhere else, but it feels to me that we have to start making sure people are paid a living, to do all the things that Macron was saying we know we need to get done, but he's not getting it done.
Right. And, you know, Deirdre, there are some embedded issues, some serious problems, right? If you think about the oldest countries in the world, 22% of people in Italy are over 65, 21% in Greece, 19% in France, 18% in the UK. From 2000 to 2017, real income, real wages went down 4% in Italy. They went down 2% in the UK and only up 3.9% in France. So you got an old aging economy, populace, with an economies without any sort of innovation, without any sort of motive to be innovative. So someone like Macron, who ran as an outsider, has got to figure this out.
Yeah, he does. I mean, and as we saw, the streets were literally burning with the pressure of him and his government trying to find a solution. I think one quirk about France's economy as well is that there's really this cradle-to-grave system, which works fine or worked fine in the past when you had a very small and limited population. You now have immigration. That's one more piece of the puzzle that they have to figure out. How do you have double or triple the amount of people taking from the same resources?
All right, Robert, Deirdre, Mattie, thank you all very much. We'll be right back to take a look at this roller coaster of a ride on Wall Street. Stay with us.